third lesson where you've tried it, training how to not know. So we're learning how to unknow what we've learned too much of. It's sort of like Kirpal Singh says his job is to uneducate people. So we're going to do some uneducating, and through the cloud of unknow, we're going to unknow what we've learned too much of. I wondered if he's a one idea author, like you know how I say there's these books with one idea. They write a book and it's just one thought. But anyways, chapter 8. But now you ask me, what is it, this thing that forces itself on me in the work of contemplation? And is it a good thing or evil? If it is an evil thing, you say, quote, then I wonder why I will heighten devotion so greatly, how it will heighten devotion so greatly. For I sometimes find it a great comfort to listen to what it says. Sometimes I find it will make me weep bitterly for pity of Christ's passion. Sometimes for my sinfulness and for many other reasons that seem to me very holy and to me great good, and therefore it seems that it cannot in any way be evil. And if it is good and does me so much good with its sweet sayings, then I wonder greatly why you tell me to push it down away from me so far below the cloud of forgetting. What is it we're forgetting? He's saying to forget all your thoughts in a way. Now this certainly seems to me a well-put question, and so I shall try to answer it with what little skill I can. First, when you ask me what it is, this thing that... what's the thing? This thing that forces itself so hard upon you in the work of contemplation, offering to help you in it. I say that it is a clear and penetrating insight. It's like insight meditation. Insight from your natural intelligence, imprinted upon your reason within your soul. And when you ask me whether it is good or evil, I say it must always be good in your own nature, because it is a ray of God's likeness. But the use to which it is put may be either good or evil. Good when you by grace it enables you to see your own sinfulness, the passion, the God's kindness, and the wonders in both body and spirit that he performs through his creation. And then it is no wonder if it heightens your devotion as greatly as you say, but use is evil when it is swollen in pride. He's saying if you get pride of practice, like pride of meditation, that's no good if you're swollen. With the ingenuity of great learning and bookish knowledge. Bookish. But this is a book. But it's about unbooking, as in your case of clerics, making them thrust themselves forward to be thought not humble scholars and masters of divinity or devotion, but proud scholars of the devil and masters of vanity and falsehood. And in other men or women, whether they live religious or secular lives, the use and effect of this natural intelligence is evil when it is puffed up with pride and ingenuous arguments about worldly matters and fleshly thoughts, coveting worldly honors, possession of wealth, and empty pleasure and the flattery of others. When you ask me why you are to push it down below the cloud, before the forgetting, he wants it all pushed down, since it is true that it is good and is kind, and moreover, when used well, it does you so much good and heightens your devotion so greatly. My answer is that you must clearly understand that there are two ways of life within the church. One is active, the other contemplative. The active is the lower, the contemplative is the higher. Active life has two levels, a higher and a lower. In contemplation, life has also two levels, a lower and a higher. These two lives are so linked together that though they differ in some respects, neither of them can be attained without some part of the other, because that is the higher part of active life, is at the same time the lower part of contemplative life. Thus you cannot be fully active unless you are partly contemplative, nor can you be fully contemplative, so as far as it is possible, unless you are partly active. The nature of the active life is such that it both begins and ends in this life, but this is not so with contemplative life. For it begins in the life and will last without end. Because the part of Mary, the part that Mary chose, shall never be taken away. Active life is troubled and harassed by many things, but contemplative life sits at peace with one thing. The lower part of active life consists of good and honorable corporeal works of mercy and charity. The higher part of active life and the lower part of contemplative life consists of good spiritual meditation and earnest thought of one's own sinfulness with sorrow and contrition, and the passion of Christ and the sufferings of his servants with pity and compassion, and the wonderful gifts, kindness, and works of God and all his creation, bodily and spiritual, with thanksgiving and praise. But the higher part of contemplation, as far as it is attainable on earth, rests entirely in the darkness and in the cloud of unknowing, with a loving stirring and a blind attention only to the bare existence of God himself. In the lower part of active life, you are outside yourself and beneath yourself. In the higher part of active life and the lower part of contemplative life, you are within yourself and level with yourself. But in the higher part of contemplative life, you are above yourself and below your God. You are above yourself because you are determined to get by grace to where you cannot come by nature, that is to say, to be bound to God in spirit and in singleness of love and harmony and of will, just as to on human understanding it is impossible for someone to reach the higher part of active life without giving up the lower part for a time. So someone will not be able to reach the higher part of contemplative life without giving up the lower part for a time. And just as it is impossible or a hindrance to someone sitting at his meditations to consider then the outward bodily actions that he has done or is going to do, however holy these actions might be in themselves, so it is certainly inappropriate and equally hinder someone working in this darkness and the cloud of unknowing with an ardent stirring of love towards God for himself. If he were to let any thought or meditation of God's wonderful gifts, kindness, and works in any part of his creation, bodily or spiritual, rise up and thrust itself between him and his God, however wholly pleasant or consoling those thoughts might be. He's saying don't have good thoughts while you're trying to meditate. Is that what that is? Too many good thoughts. Sort of like it's a hindrance, just as it is impossible and a hindrance for someone sitting at his meditations. He shouldn't be thinking. It is for this reason that I tell you to push down any such penetrating subtle thoughts and cover it with a thick cloud of forgetting. So forget about it. However holy it may be, or however much it may promise to help you in your purpose. For love may reach God in this life, but knowledge may not. I guess he just doesn't think bookish knowledge is going to work. But knowledge may not, and the whole time that the soul dwells in this mortal body, the sharpness of our understanding is always mixed with some kind of mental image, and it is directed towards spiritual things, but most especially towards God. And because of this work of contemplation must be impure, it would be very surprising if it did not lead us into great error. We're reading from a book on how to get an uneducation. The book of unknowing, the Cloud of Unknowing. So if you want to follow the way of unknowing in Christian meditation with John Main, you should learn the Cloud of Unknowing, I would say. It's sort of like I'm going to put this in the cloud, so. And I don't know if this is a one-theme book where it keeps saying to stop letting your thoughts interfere with meditation. It's a one idea book, though I don't think it necessarily is. But because it's a classic, it's probably got very good versions of the same idea. We're reading from The Cloud of Unknowing, Penguin Classics, Chapter 8.